Hey everybody, welcome back to the Dungeon Dive. Daniel here. I hope you're doing well, and if you're not, I hope you are soon. Okay, today in the Dungeon Dive, we have some things I like about 5 games I don't. So I don't do a lot of negative reviews, I just don't have fun doing them. And if I don't have something really nice to say about a game, or at least something interesting or constructive, I'm probably just not going to make a video about it. And that's just how I am. I have more fun praising things than I do being negative about things. And there are some games out there that I do not like. And the funny thing is probably every single one of these games on this list today is a game that most people who like these kinds of games absolutely love. I would bet that a lot of people who like dungeon crawls, a lot of people who like solo adventure style games, that many of these games would actually be in their top 10. And these are just games that I personally don't like, but there are some things that I do like about them. Now, the way this is ordered is number 1 is actually the game that I might buy again. It's the game that if I found for really cheap or someone gave it to me, I would probably keep it or buy a cheap copy just to give it another chance. It's the one that I think I would have a better chance of actually coming around to and liking. Whereas number 5 is a game that I wouldn't even take for free. So let's get to the list. Coming in at number 5 is Madara. So what I don't like about Madara, there's way too much reading and it's just not really that well written. I'm a constant reader and I'm a book collector and I read a ton of fantasy and science fiction. However, when I want to read a book, I will turn to a book. I will turn to something written by a professional author with a professional editor, with the filter of a professional publisher. I don't want to read a novel while I am playing a game or listen to a novel. There were times when my group got together to play Madara where it felt like we were reading and or listening far more than we were playing. I also don't like how the loot was governed by the campaign and how it limited when and what I could purchase as my character in that world. The campaign was also way too slow to introduce new enemies. I will gladly go the rest of my life without ever fighting another cave sickle again. So, what do I like? What did I like about Madara? Because to say that Madara is a bad game is ridiculous. It is a very, very well-made game, and it deserves all of the love that it has. So what are some of the things that I liked about Madara? I liked a lot. I loved the way that the maps changed while you were playing. You had that book that would tell you how to set up your map, and then you could trigger something during a quest where you would look in another book and it would reveal something. Like maybe you would strike a wall and in a cave, and part of the wall would crumble, revealing a whole new section of the cave, and you had no idea that that was coming. Or maybe you fell through a pit to a lower level and you had to set up a new lower level of the dungeon. That was really interesting and really well done, and it created for a lot of surprises at the table. I also liked all of the loot. There's a ton of loot in the game, and I just didn't like the way that the campaign would say, well, you can buy this, but you can't buy this yet. You have to wait. You have to wait 40 to 50 hours before you can use this thing that's in the box that you bought. But you can make some really cool builds with the loot and the player and the player powers, their skills and stuff. So that was really fun. Those two things were great. So that was number 5, Madara. Coming in at number 4 is Final Girl. What don't I like about Final Girl? Oh my God, where to start? No, so this is the only game that I have ever rage quit. The only board game, maybe even video games. I don't usually get really angry where I just I wanted to throw this game through my wall. I played 3 games, 3 learning games in a row. I bought the big box set to do a whole bunch of videos. And I got so mad at the end of that 3rd game that I boxed everything up, went straight to my car, drove to my local game store and sold it. Yeah, I hated how all of the actions were dependent on how you rolled the dice. I had something like a dozen turns in a row where I couldn't do anything because of the way my dice rolled and the actions that I had on the cards. The entire system just didn't make any sense to me at all. So, what were some of the things I liked about Final Girl? The theme. Oh my God, the theme is amazing. I'm a huge horror head. I'm constantly watching horror movies. I love slasher movies. I love 80s horror movies. That's my decade I grew up in. And watching all of those movies, I could not get enough. I cannot get enough of that style of movie. I loved the modular system, how you would pick a map, a Final Girl, and a slasher, a villain, and combine those together to make something cool. I wish I liked Final Girl. It seems like it's tailor-made for me. It's tailor-made for solo play. But man, I just had 3 of the very, very worst experiences I have ever had in that game. I've never had a worse first impression than Final Girl. Okay, number 3 is Sword and Sorcery. What don't I like about Sword and Sorcery? It's mainly the writing. The weird anachronistic humor just fell flat for me. The prose style I thought was clunky. Again, this kind of goes back to me being a constant reader of fantasy. If I want to read a fantasy story, I'm just going to read a really good fantasy story written by Robert E. Howard or Michael Moorcock or Zelazny or Fritz Lieber or somebody like that, or Asa Drake. I don't turn to my games to read a fantasy story. I turn to my games to experience a fantasy story. The overall story I thought just wasn't very engaging. I didn't like the map tiles. I thought they did a really poor job of conveying the environment that you were playing in. I also didn't like any of the heroes. Whenever I got to level up, I was never excited about choosing one power over the other. When I have a choice in a game to choose a new skill, I want both. I want it to be a hard choice because, oh my God, both skills are awesome. Do I choose this one that gives me this ability or this one that gives me this ability? In Sword and Sorcery, the characters that I ever played, I would level up and I was like, I guess I'll take this one because it's not as boring as that one. So that was a pretty big turnoff. What did I like? What do I like about Sword and Sorcery? I think the enemy AI is really good. The enemies were challenging and they often did cool and surprising things. While the bestiary was somewhat limited, you didn't have a huge variety in the types of enemies. When you combined those enemies with their various tactics and powers, it made it feel like it was a big, expansive bestiary. So the combat in Sword and Sorcery was actually really fun and really good. It did have a lot of icons and chits, tokens, but all of those would work together to create some really compelling and interesting combat. So Sword and Sorcery actually has really good combat. Number 2, and I am somewhat curious in these newer kind of standalone sets / expansions for Sword and Sorcery. I could see myself maybe picking up one of the newer sets to check it out again. Coming in at number 2 is Gloomhaven, and I've only played Gloomhaven and Jaws of the Lion. I haven't played Frosthaven. So Gloomhaven, what I don't like the card play at all. I don't like how you have to burn a card at certain times to heal or rest or whatever, and you have to get rid of cards. The beginning of each game in Gloomhaven is super fun because you have so many choices, and then the end of the game, the end of a quest is super boring because you don't have any choices. I don't like how the loot works. Too many of the weapons and too many of the pieces of the armor were one use on a quest, and that just doesn't make any sense to me. I bought this armor and it only prevents damage one time. Why? What's going on with that armor after I take one hit? Does it just break and then I pick it up and carry it for the rest of the quest? I don't know. Just the loot just was not very exciting. I also didn't like how you couldn't explore the maps to pick up gold and loot after the quest was done. I was like, why? Who's kicking me out of this? I went to this warehouse. I killed all the bandits. There's a whole bunch of loot. There's a whole bunch of gold over there. Why can't I just go and pick it up? Why do I have to incorporate that loot, that hoovering up of the loot while I'm playing the game? Well, because it's more of a puzzle game. I've often said that Gloomhaven is a dungeon crawl for people who don't like dungeon crawls. And that's fine. And that's kind of why it has that mass appeal. So what did I like? What do I like about Gloomhaven? And this might be a little weird. And you kind of have to go back in time to that first Kickstarter, but it's the value. I wish I liked Gloomhaven just because it gives you a ton of game and a ton of stuff for the price, especially that initial Kickstarter, which I think was like $90 for an entire year's worth of fantasy gaming. That was just incredible. What a great time to be into Gloomhaven. If you bought on that first Kickstarter, man, you got maybe the value, the deal of a lifetime on that thing. Just incredible. Jaws of the Lion is also a really great value. And the fact that you can just go to, I don't know, what, Walmart or Target and buy Jaws of the Lion, that is mine. That just boggles my mind. I can't even imagine getting into gaming when I was younger and being able to go just to a normal big box, just a total normal store and buying something like Gloomhaven Jaws of the Lion. That's incredible. I still own Jaws of the Lion, but I've given it to a friend. If he ever gives it back, I don't know if he's playing it or not. I don't really care. But if he ever gives it back, I might continue to play that and check it out again. Okay, and coming in at number one is Mage Knight. And what I don't like about Mage Knight is, again, it's that card play. Too much time was spent calculating and determining if I was going to succeed or not, and then just knowing if I was going to succeed when I approached a challenge, it stripped the game of any kind of drama. I like drama in games. I like uncertainty. I like rolling dice and being like, oh no, I didn't do it. I was one away, or just getting that clutch, that last throw where you get super lucky. I think things that create drama have a lot of highs and lows. And in a game like Gloomhaven and Mage Knight, where they are designed more with kind of a Euro sensibility, they try to shrink that curve of luck. And in doing so, they also, I think, strip out some of the drama and some of the excitement. And so for a lot of time spent playing Mage Knight, I felt more like I was an accountant doing numbers, crunching the numbers to see if I could afford the risk rather than a hero taking the risk. What do I like about Mage Knight? I love the way it looks on the table. It has an awesome game presence. It looks interesting. It looks intriguing. I love the tiles. Spacing out the tiles or laying the tiles and going on that hex crawling adventure was really cool. And like I said, this is the game that I am most likely to buy and give a chance again. I can see myself maybe eventually liking Mage Knight. And if I came across a copy that was affordable, I could see myself picking it up. But yeah, so those were some things I like about 5 games that I don't like. I hope you guys liked this top 5, and we will talk to you later. Bye-bye.